Do you want insight into how I keep up with everything happening in the news? Stick around until the end of this video for an important offer from Ground News. Two things. If indeed you watch my content with any regularity at all, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. I am on a press to get to 1 million subscribers within like the next 6 months. I think we can do it, but I can only do it with your help. Two, click the link in the description below. Make sure that you have set a reminder and alert to join us for our live stream that Brittany Page and I will be hosting right here on this channel at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time on election night. We're going to have guests. We're going to be playing some video clips of Trump, having a good time while following the election returns. Steve Bannon is now out of prison, and it didn't take him any time at all to get back on the air and attempt to radicalize Republicans with using some of the most incendiary and provocative language that he can. He's using his martyrdom after 4 months in a minimum security federal prison in Danbury, Connecticut, as some kind of a rallying cry for the MAGA world. He got on Real America's Voice, where the War Room is streamed. Reportedly, there were roughly right around 100,000 people watching when he was making a call to action that if you're not willing to go to prison for Donald Trump, you're not really dedicated to this operation. Watch this, and then we'll play a couple other clips where he just shows a fundamental lack of understanding about how the country works.
And our coalition is now going to include a wide swath of African-American men and Hispanic men. This is the game changer. I'll give you a lot of details about that, of things I learned in prison. Let me say something. If you're not prepared to be sent to a federal prison as a political prisoner, then you're not worthy to be in this movement and to step forward and try to save your country. You have to understand, they want to put you in prison, and they will put you in prison. If you can't accept that, then you don't know what they represent. They talk about President Trump, he's going to do this, he's going to do this. Look at what they've done, and look at President Trump gets sentenced on the 26th. Don't think they're just going to wave that on. This is a fight for not simply the direction of this country, but what this country actually stands for.
That is stark. If you're not prepared to be sent to a federal prison as a political prisoner, he claims he is, then you're not worthy to be in this movement. This is similar to the same language that was used when they incited an insurrection against the country. You need to fight for your country. The same thing I just covered in the 3 o'clock video about this Republican official who was caught stealing ballots reportedly in Indianapolis. He's been charged. He's been arrested. He said the same thing. I'm just trying to fight for my country. The same thing that insurrectionists said. The same thing Steve Bannon is now admonishing his audience, that you have to be willing to go to federal prison as a political prisoner. Here's a minute and 46 of his initial news conference, his presser that he did in New York City upon release, where he's really laying it on thick.
Thank you for coming. You know, I put and I think Raheem Kassam has just put it up. The first statement I think I made from Danbury was about 4 weeks ago, September 26th. I said, victory is at hand. That you could see the collapse of this kind of phony campaign by Kamala Harris, the politics of joy, right? And she had nothing to back it up whatsoever. And you could see the beginning in the polls start to come our way. I'm very proud that the War Room has had President Trump's back, and it particularly has been the platform for the grassroots movement to have their voice heard. And I said at that time, that with the hard work of the Get Out the Vote effort and the election integrity effort, that we were on the cusp of having an incredible victory that could actually be a potential landslide. Now we come to today, and I'm finally out of being a political prisoner by the Merrick Garland, Kamala Harris, Nancy Pelosi regime. Okay, for standing up for my political beliefs against an illegitimate committee in the House that did not have a ranking member and did not have minority counsel. I went to a federal prison for 4 months. Now, Nancy Pelosi and Kamala Harris and Merrick Garland thought they were going to do two things. Number one, they were going to shut down the war room and not have that as a voice for the grassroots movement of MAGA in this country. And number two, break me.
Yeah, they wanted to break you, goof. Look, I'm going to play this next clip, which dovetails into what he just said, but it really does show an ignorance, and I don't know that it's an ignorance on his part. What it shows on his part is manipulation of an ignorant audience. That notice he's not mentioning Joe Biden, even though that was the message, that was the drumbeat up until he dropped out of the race. That it's weaponizing the Justice Department. This is Joe Biden, blah blah blah. Now, nowhere to be heard. His name is nowhere to be heard. It's Nancy Pelosi, who's not Speaker of the House anymore, Merrick Garland, an absolutely milquetoast Attorney General who did not move swiftly or strongly enough in the face of an attempt to overthrow the government of the United States, and Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, as though she's pulling the levers at the Justice Department as Vice President. And here he is, more whining about Nancy Pelosi, as though she is the ultimate mastermind here as well, as the former Speaker of the House, controlling the Justice Department and controlling the prosecutors who prosecuted him and the jury that sat. All of this apparently is Nancy Pelosi and her immense power as someone who's not even Speaker of the House anymore.
And Nancy Pelosi thought a federal prison was going to break me. Well, it empowered me. It empowered me. I am more empowered today, more focused today, sharper today, in better shape today than I've ever been in my entire life. So Nancy Pelosi, suck on that.
Can she suck on that? Steve Bannon, super cool, in shape guy. If this is you in the best shape of your life, yikes. So Steve Bannon, this is obviously an attempt to whip the crowd into a frenzy, the audience into a frenzy, that they need to be prepared to go to federal prison for Donald Trump, and that Nancy Pelosi was responsible for him breaking the law, for him being held in contempt of Congress, of refusing a legal subpoena. Nancy Pelosi was in charge of the decision to bring charges against him. Nancy Pelosi was in charge of the prosecution. Nancy Pelosi was in charge of all of the jurors who sat on that case, of all of the grand jurors before that. Nancy Pelosi was in charge of the verdict. Nancy Pelosi was in charge of the federal judge. Nancy Pelosi. Do they listen to themselves? Steve Bannon, everybody, good times. What do you think? I'd love to know. I invite you to this conversation. You can click the join button below, become a channel member for $2 a month. Go over to my Patreon page, patreon.com/IDoubtIt podcast. If you do want to communicate with the show and join this conversation, you can comment below or leave a voicemail, 714-576-4054, or as always, the old-fashioned mode of communication, the electronic mail, email, daily@dollemore.com. Follow me on social media everywhere at Dollemore. I'd love to see you there. And stick around for a word from a very appropriate sponsor for this particular video, Ground News, a source where you can find the bias from different outlets. If Trump is reelected, he has made it clear in this Truth Social post that he is intent upon revenge against anyone who questions him. It's one of the many recent examples of his dangerous authoritarian mindset and his plans for a future where public dissent is not met with debate, but with prison time. As you might guess, few, if any, right-wing outlets are covering news items like this. And if they are, it's someone like belligerent Ben Shapiro boosting for dropout Doug Burgum in North Dakota. Meanwhile, an independent outlet like Mother Jones is calling it what it is: voter suppression as designed by Project 2025. To say nothing of the spectrum of takes on social media platforms like Trump's, they all serve someone's agenda. Where is the best place to get a clear view of the various angles on a story and cut through the noise of social media? Ground News. It's an app and website that gathers the world's news in one place and exposes the bias of every outlet. With Ground News, you can easily compare coverage across the political spectrum to achieve a more coherent understanding of a particular issue. Democracy cannot survive on blind loyalty and echo chambers. It requires independent thought and civil discourse. That is why Ground News is here and what it's all about. Use Ground News to keep informed about the Middle East or to find out more about labor strikes in your area. All kinds of things are covered. Expand your information base. Head to ground.news/Dollemore or just scan my QR code below to score 40% off the very same unlimited access Vantage plan that I use for this show. By signing up, you'll be supporting not one, but two independent platforms working to make media more transparent. Ground News and Dollemore, unlimit your knowledge with Ground News.